Hey all, hope you're doing well out there. Today we're going to talk about the Ultimate Carry J-frames from Smith & Wesson. These are a relatively new introduction in Smith & Wesson's line in partnership with Lipsey's, who I think were the impetus for this project, along with some consulting from Daryl Bulkey and Brian Eastridge from AmericanFightingRevolver.com. When these guns were announced, I was super interested because I really like snubs, and these are kind of the ideal carry package for a snub-nosed revolver, at least in my mind, and I think in the minds of many people who know what they're talking about more so than I do. The idea, as I understand it, behind these Ultimate Carry J-frames is to put a feature set that is considered desirable by snub aficionados and be able to produce it at a relatively affordable price, especially if you compare what it would cost to put some of these features on a regular stock 442 or 642 or similar. So this feature set starts with the sights. They were able to do a pinned front sight and a dovetail rear. The front sight is a green dot with a tritium insert. It kind of has a rounded profile to it. And the rear sight is blacked out, serrated with a U notch. Very easy to see sight picture that I think a lot of people really like on these small guns. It's not super precise, but very effective for the purpose of a carry J-frame. These are made by XS Sights. The people behind the design of the Ultimate Carry also collaborated with VZ Grips on this set of boot grips. These have not been in production at all up to this point. They have an enclosed backstrap, finger grooves, no texturing. They're made of G10. Great set of grips. I really like the way they feel. Ideal for a carry J-frame. Obviously, you're not going to want something super aggressive, but this kind of gives you a little bit more purchase versus like the open backstrap grips on a stock J-frame. Smith & Wesson also changed the trigger geometry on these. I don't know the finer details just because I'm really not all that well versed in the internals of a J-frame. There's a great article over on the Revolver Guy website, I believe, that he gets into some of the details about the changes made to the internal workings of these Ultimate Carry guns. I don't have a direct comparison at the moment. I had a 442 for a number of years that had a pretty mediocre trigger. From memory, these feel a bit better than what I remember. I'm still breaking them in, though. I think that just with some dry fire and shooting, I think they'll improve a lot. You'll also notice the absence of the internal lock, which is a much hated feature on new production Smith & Wessons, so really good to see them getting rid of that lock. The Ultimate Carry J-frames were introduced in 32 H&R Magnum and 38 Special. So here we have a 432, which is obviously in 32, and the 642 in 38 Special. We'll start with the 432. It's kind of the star of the show because Smith & Wesson has really not produced any 32 caliber J-frames in a number of years. And I think 32 H&R is a phenomenal caliber for a lightweight snub like this. Starting off, you have a 6-shot cylinder. You have the ability to shoot 32 H&R, 32 long, and 32 Smith & Wesson, also known as 32 short. So you get a really nice array of calibers to shoot. 32 long is basically like shooting a 22. There's hardly any recoil at all. Just super fun to shoot 32 long in this gun. 32 H&R, I would say it's a little bit less recoil than shooting a relatively light load out of a snubby 38. Very comfortable to shoot and a pretty effective cartridge, again, for the intents and purposes of concealed carry, a pocket gun, or a relatively deep concealed carry gun. I will admit I got a little worried at first. There were a lot of reports on these 32s, especially for light strikes, the gun not setting off certain primers, a whole host of issues, honestly, with the QC on these. So I got a little worried, but I haven't had any issues since. I've put about 100 rounds of 32 long through it and maybe about 50 of the Black Hills 85 grain 32 H&R load, which is probably what I'll end up carrying in it once I vet the guns enough. No issues at all with reliability. The gun is run really well, at least in that regard. Like I said, just super fun gun to shoot, especially with 32 longs. Just makes you want to sit out there and shoot J-frames all day, which is kind of cool. The only annoyance I've had with it so far is that it shoots about 2 inches left at 10 yards. I really took my time, tried to see where the gun was shooting, and that was just kind of consistent across the board. I was getting that slightly left impact. Not a big deal. I can push this sight over, and I'll probably get to that sometime this week and get it dialed in. But they really made a big deal about both these guns being zeroed to certain carry loads that are common, and that obviously wasn't the case with this one. At least it was just a little off. Not a big deal. Not something I'm super worried about. Just a minor annoyance. I will say too, these sights in general, I don't know if it's just the shape of them with the rounded front sight, but it takes a little getting used to, kind of like figuring out exactly where to hold and how to hold. And I think if it had a flat top, you could be a little bit more precise with it. But again, people who know what they're talking about a lot more than I do kind of develop the feature set on this gun. And it's just something that takes a little getting used to, and it's probably going to be a little bit different for everybody's eyes, kind of how they see the sights, one of those things. The 642 has been pretty solid for me as well over the short time I've owned it. Out of the box, no manufacturing defects or some of the other QC issues that I've seen out there on the internet. So it's been pretty good in that regard. I've got about the same amount of ammo through it. I think I've got 150 rounds. I put a box of Federal Gold Medal Match 148 grain wad cutters, which will be my carry load. I'm just not a recoil guy, and I don't really like shooting hot 38s out of a lightweight gun. Your mileage may vary. I just like to be able to shoot more or less the ammo that I'm going to carry at relatively longer range sessions, and just be able to train that way, as opposed to training with light loads and then moving up to something hot. Just never really makes a lot of sense to me, and I think a 38 wad cutter is a totally fine concealed carry round when we're talking about a lightweight revolver. I also have another 100 or so of my wad cutter reloads, which are more or less running the same velocities as the Gold Medal Match. No issues. The guns run fine. Again, a similar sighting thing. The first time I had it out to the range, I had only put, 30 rounds through it or something at this particular session, and I was just having trouble figuring out where to hold. So everything was going high, and I kind of got all mad about it, actually, just that the fact that it wasn't dialed into the loads they said. I just realized that I might have been a little fatigued at the time and wasn't really taking my time at that particular session trying to see the sights the right way. Once I got it figured out and how to hold, I found that I just have to hold that green dot a little bit lower in the U-notch and not focus so much on trying to align the top of the front sights, just because, again, of the way this rounded sight kind of interacts with my eyes. So no issues there. Pretty accurate gun, honestly. Again, I'm not a great shooter, but I feel like it outshoots me for sure. So if these things prove to be reliable over the next 500 rounds or so, they're definitely going to see some carry time. I've been running both of these guns out of a Filster City Special holster that I picked up for it. Great little snub holster. They make it for both the LCR and the J-frame. Just kind of trying it out of the holster, seeing how things work. I think it's a really great little package. If you like snub-nosed revolvers, if you live the snub life, as they say, just the sights, the grips, just very practical, easy to live with. Just a really cool gun, a cool idea. I'm glad to see Lipsey's getting Smith & Wesson to produce something like this. I think, Smith & Wesson should have produced something like this decades ago. And they probably would have sold a ton of them, but they're, Smith & Wesson is Smith & Wesson. They do Smith & Wesson things. Can't really change that. This 432 in particular, just a super cool gun. Really glad to see some companies kind of latching on to .32 H&R and the revolver, and some ammo companies stepping up to the plate to make sure that there's .32 ammo out there. I think J-frames should be in .32 caliber, honestly. You know, I love the .38 special, but I just think for a lightweight snubby like this, .32 makes a ton of sense. Just a fun, practical gun to shoot. And again, the 642, it's a classic. A 5-shot J-frame, .38 special, Centennial, airweight. It's a classic gun, so I'm glad to see them pay attention to that too. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what else Lipsey's and Smith & Wesson come up with. Definitely a bummer to see a lot of reports about bad QC, people having issues with these guns. I think it's ridiculous that you spend, $700-800 on a new J-frame, a design that has been in production for, decades, and Smith & Wesson still finds ways to screw it up. Thankfully, it doesn't seem like either of these two examples experienced that, but again, I've seen a lot of pretty scary reports from people, guns falling apart, obviously the light primer strike thing, a lot of things that really shouldn't be happening at all. So that's the Smith & Wesson Ultimate Carry J-frames. I will definitely do a full review on both of these guns in the future once I feel like I have enough time on them to really give you guys a good review. I appreciate you watching. You guys have a great day. Bye now.